Hi, I've got a movie recommendation for you. It's called Palm Springs. It's very funny, it has physics in it, and if you watch close, you might see someone you know. It's on Hulu. I think it's only available in the US right now, but eventually it'll probably be available elsewhere. It's got an R rating for fairly raunchy content, so I just want to give you a little warning. If you're okay with sexual content with comedic intent, then you'll be fine. But if you don't like that, then you might want to pass. Watching it reminded me of an obsession I have, which is chalkboards. Ever since I've been teaching for the past 15 years, I like to think about what's the best way to write on a chalkboard, what's the best way to draw like a perfect circle, the different surfaces, the different kinds of chalk, how to clean them. I think too much about this. So when I watch a movie now and I see a chalkboard, I like focus in on it and sort of wonder, what class occurred and what's on there. Does it make any sense? So I thought it might be fun to kind of go through and look at chalkboards in movies. So we're going to start with my favorite professor, Dr. Indiana Jones, professor of archaeology. And of course, there is a chalkboard to see in Raiders of the Lost Ark. So we're going to look at that. Before we do it, I want to acknowledge that the Indiana Jones movies are not the most culturally sensitive movies ever created, even for something set in the 30s and 40s. But we'll just put that aside, and we're just going to look at a chalkboard in the background of one scene. So hopefully that's okay. Okay, so let's have a look. All right, so here is Professor Jones teaching his class, and you can see he's got some archaeology drawings up there. And this isn't the chalkboard I'm going to talk about because I don't know anything about archaeology. And then Professor Brody stops by, and he has something he needs to tell him. And after class, Brody says that some Army intelligence guys want to come talk to you about something top secret. And Jones is like, okay, I'll just, here I come. I'll just leave all these valuable artifacts on the desk. And they're heading down the hall, and he says, like, in your office? He said, no, let's meet in this giant lecture hall where it'd be easy for people to eavesdrop on us. Okay, so here we are in the lecture hall, walking around, and there it is. There's the board that I have started to look more closely at. And if we zoom in on it, oh my God, it's physics. So here we have h equals v squared over 2g something, where v equals, so here's another shot of the board. These are pretty blurry, but when you watch the actual movie, you can read it better. Where v equals the velocity of, probably supposed to say projectile, it actually says projection, okay. And g is the acceleration due to gravity. So we are definitely doing kinematics. Now we know that if you have a ball or a mass and you throw it up like a projectile and you give it an initial velocity v, and you throw it up and you say, how high does it go? We know vf squared equals vi squared plus 2ad. So vf, it comes to a rest, so 0 equals what they're calling v squared plus 2, and then g would be negative g because the acceleration is opposite direction to the velocity, and then d would be like the height. So if you solve that for h, you get v squared over 2g. So whoever wrote this knew a little bit of kinematics. Now I'm not sure what's going on here. 1 minus a squared g squared over v to the fourth. It kind of looks like some correction term, some unitless thing where you have 1 minus some small number, maybe corrects for air drag or something. But I really couldn't get it to work out. If this is g squared, that's meters squared per second to the fourth, v to the fourth, meters to the fourth over seconds to the fourth. So a squared has to be meters squared, so it has to be something with a dimension of meters. And I don't really know what this would be to be a correction for drag. So I don't think that makes any sense. But they did write a little bit of kinematics and then 4 questions. And the questions, I think, are just algebra. I don't think the questions mean anything. V equals 100d over m. Find d. Well, d equals 100 over mv. I mean, I'm not sure. Or no, I'm sorry, d equals mv over 100. mv maybe is a momentum. Number 2, b, and then they forgot the equal sign. And then something, and find c. It kind of looks like maybe something. They all look vaguely physical, but they don't really make any sense. They're just algebra. So my guess on this one is that, when they were setting up the room, they just found the youngest person, the intern, that maybe had been in a classroom and said, go write some science on the board. And that person had taken physics and remembered a little bit of kinematics, brilliantly tried to write down a correction term, although it's nothing correct about it. And then that's all they knew, and they had to finish the board, so they just wrote some problems. So that's pretty much my analysis of this board. I think it's pretty good. I was going to give it a B plus actually, because it looks fairly realistic, like it came from a real class, except for dropping the grade because later in the scene, look what happens. Indy's here and he wants to explain something to the military guys, so he flips the board over and it's blank. And I think we all know that if this were a physics class, the back of that board would not be blank. It would also be covered with equations. So I'm dropping it down to a B, not quite a B plus. I also want to point out that Harrison Ford, I don't know if he practiced, but he's actually very good at drawing on a board. I mean, this is not easy. If you actually watch the movie, he actually has like some refraction. There's a slight change in angle after his really nice drawing of the staff of Ra here. So I give Harrison Ford an A in terms of his board work. All right, so I'm going to look for some more movies, or if you want to suggest one, you can. I'm sure we've all noticed a few interesting blackboards in the background.